Hey, Melissa.
Hey, Amy.
So we just met with Nancy Hannagan. And for those of y'all who are kind of grew up in this area in DFW, Nancy used to be Nancy Disterlich. So in fact, if you hear her talk during the podcast and say Miss D or D, she's talking about herself. She just recently had a name change, but she was a really exciting guest to have on.
She was. And I'm going to toot my own horn again because I got to know her through working with her years ago in one of our school districts nearby. So I'm really proud that I got the opportunity to know her. But more importantly, I am really happy that I got to learn from her through this podcast. Every time I listen to her speak, she teaches me something new. And she's just an incredible person. She really has a breadth of knowledge that is wide and vast, and she is so eloquent in the way she explains everything. So,
well, yeah, for sure. So let's discuss a little bit about who Nancy is. So she has over 20 years of experience as an educator, speaker, and training. And Nancy is one of the most experienced, successful educators in the field. She holds a Bachelor's of Arts in Early Childhood Development from the University of Oklahoma and a Master's of Art in Teaching for Multisensory Instruction from DBU, Dallas Baptist University. She's a COUT and a licensed COUT in Texas and a member of the ALTA, the Academic Language Therapy Association.
As a person with dyslexia herself, a parent with children with dyslexia, and a professional dyslexia consultant, Nancy has unique insight and perspective. So she offers those very innovative solutions and inspires creative strategies that help both students and educators build independence and confidence. She's committed to leading through examples and inspiring collaborative efforts towards student academic, social, and emotional success. And I really love the way she always had a way to tie this in with a real world experience. Everything she told us, she gave us like little ways to have analogies to something.
That's one of my favorite things about listening to her speak is all the analogies that she pulls in. And it just kind of just hones it in a little bit more for you. That's one of my favorite things when she spoke. And I really think you're going to enjoy her. So we're going to take it away and let Nancy start the show. So hope you enjoy this.
Yes.
Bye. Hi, this is Amy.
And Melissa. We are a couple of retired Texas teachers who are CALTs, Certified Academic Language Therapists. We started our own businesses, and now we have a podcast called
The Dyslexia Duo. So join us for our informative podcast, where we'll delve into dyslexia, covering the topics that affect parents, therapists, teachers, practitioners, and anyone who wants to learn more. We'll guide you through everything you need to know, from the first signs to the intricacies of dyslexia curriculum placement and beyond.
This season, we will cover the referral process, what to expect when your child or student is dyslexic, the generational impacts of dyslexia, and how to support those affected.
Come join us. This is Amy.
And Melissa.
And we're the Dyslexia Duo. So today we have a very good friend of ours on the show. She doesn't live in Texas any longer, and we were really sad about that. But then luckily she came back into our lives again. So we are so proud to introduce Nancy Hannagan. So Nancy, would you introduce yourself to our listeners now? And I always say this, we have a wide variety of listeners. We have teachers, we have practitioners, we have therapists, we have decision makers, we have policy makers, we have parents. We have everything in place. So go ahead and introduce yourself. And we're global. So kind of tell everybody who you are and what you do and just some of your background.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on today. It is nice to see you personally, but also professionally, and wish you the best of luck with this podcast. So I know you're making your impact globally. So it's an honor to even be here. My background's very unique, I think. I went through my life frustrated, but not knowing the why. And it wasn't until I became a mother with a child that was struggling in school did we, over years of asking the wrong questions and diving in the wrong places, did we uncover that two of my children have dyslexia. And in that journey, I was a classroom teacher and was like, wait a minute, I think there's more going on here. And so I decided to become a dyslexia therapist. And in that process, I was identified with dyslexia. So professionally and personally, it has impacted my life. And because of what I learned in structured literacy and becoming a certified academic language therapist, it became my passion for classroom teachers to know more about the science of reading. And now that we have such a wave coming from the Reading League and research and our curriculum changes, it's the banner is not just waving, but the banner is being implemented in our classroom. So I love that this conversation is here. So that's my background. And I went from the classroom, from shouting at the rooftops of dyslexia. I actually was offered or had the privilege to work at a regional center in Texas. And that way you get to navigate the legal or compliance aspect of implementation of dyslexia law into schools. And so from that lens, I got to see all the different ways schools were interpreting and practicing dyslexia intervention. And so that gave me a wider range of how to support schools because, it really was different depending on your resources and your leadership.
I actually just have to brag for just a moment because I got to work with you, Nancy. I had the privilege of working with you many years ago, and I just was so enamored with your public speaking skills, your ability to learn everything that you could learn about therapy, providing the resources to children that really helps them be successful, and sharing that wealth of knowledge with everybody you came in contact with. So I want to pat myself on the back. I pat you on the back and, hey, Amy, come here. Let me pat you on the back too, because you know her too. But
I would do that. They have T-Rex arms.
I just, so proud.
I what I have found is that teachers are working so hard, and it was frustrating to know that there was research out there and tools where we could support kids better. And I agree, both Amy and Melissa working with you, the more we knew that we could help and we saw the results, the more we wanted more teachers to know about it. We were like, oh my gosh, it works. And then, of course, what I love most about being an educator is I learn every time I get a new kid.
Yeah,
right.
Because they all come a little bit different. You're like, this worked last time. And so that's what's beautiful about sharing on these podcasts, because you get another little tool in your toolbox. You're like, oh, I do have a kid that's blocked, or I do have a kid that's not doing this. Or you already brought me some of the questions of where does executive function play in on top of dyslexia? So yes, the layers, unraveling that with professionals that have the same passion with both of you. Yes, I agree. It's
right. And
rewarding.
And we've had people request information about working with higher level aged range kids, like high school level kids. And I know that that's something that you have experience in. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with our listeners as well.
Awesome.
Later on.
So you're a COUT, right? You're a COUT?
Yes.
Okay. Did you go through, where did you get your COUT from?
So my journey, I was in a public school in Texas, and they partnered with Shelton Schools and Dallas Baptist University. And so my training is actually an MTA.
Very good. And just in case our listeners want to look at your website, what is your website called before we get to the end of it and they go, gosh, what was our website?
Yeah, I am now a private consultant. And so I work with families, I work with school districts, and I train nationally. My website is dyslexiaconnects.com. And it's minimal resources, but it's for you to connect with me, and then I can come in. I'm working with districts right now where we are helping them get with compliance, or what do I do, Nancy? Well, here's what's really cool. It's rewarding is they'll say, Nancy, we have a student with dyslexia. Can you come in and consult? And so we work, how do we build that IEP plan? How do we work with that student individually and get them started if they don't have COUTs in their district? And that way they can just have a conversation and navigate it, not only in best practices for that individual student, but also to protect the school district. So that's what I have on Dyslexia Connects. And then I still do train nationally. And so the Bureau of Educational Resources, I've got my little commercial, I guess. I have trainings February 10th and 25th, March 28th and 31st. And then this summer, the Bureau of Educational Resources has the Dyslexia 2-day conference. And I have a new session, which I'm so excited about. Every time I think I'm done with it, I tweak it and I build it out a little bit further. But it's on time management for students with dyslexia.
Nice.
And it's evolved over time, but it's kind of the small little things that I have tweaked in my training that I think have made an impact on their engagement. And of course, if they are more engaged and you're better utilizing their memory, then your therapy is sticking and staying. And so over the long track, you've got more retainment of these skills.
So would they find that information through the Bureau of Educational Resources, or is that through your Dyslexia Connect?
You go to the Bureau of Educational Resources, but I will be adding it to my website.
Nice. Very good. So you kind of already talked about what led to your career. So let's kind of jump into dyslexia. Utilizing your expertise, what is dyslexia?
So it's kind of funny because you have the definition inside Sally Shaywitz, Woodcock Johnson, International Dyslexia Association, and there's a common thread through them. The one that I most enjoy explaining dyslexia is Dr. Pickering through Shelton Scholes. She talks about it being a language processing disorder, and I like starting there. And the reason why is because so many of our research intervention is geared toward reading, which it is our focus, and it encompasses the majority of our struggle. But for a student struggling with the obstacles of dyslexia, if you do not let them know that it also encompasses retrieval of words, if it does, it encompasses direction. It's not for all of them, but there is a truth that this language disability transfers into other areas, and you have to address all of it. So my definition is that's a language processing disability that manifests in interacting with language, both written and reading and in speaking. And that is not what you're going to see all the time, but it is what my reality is when I'm working with these students. And when they go to say something and they're like, on the wall and and if you don't let them know that that's part of the struggle and you don't address it inside of your therapy, I do think these students leave frustrated, the ones that are more severe.
Yeah.
And again, dyslexia is on an individual basis, and it depends on that individual student. And if they're bilingual, if they have ADHD, you've got a different way you're going to approach their therapy.
I agree with what you say. I'm thinking of the reading rope, right? And I know that's kind of old school to go to. I think so many of us as teachers, practitioners, therapists, we hover on that bottom strand of the reading rope, and we forget about all the other pieces that go along with language.
Absolutely. And I think we're amiss on our therapy if we don't consider that when you're evaluating a student, you're looking at their needs. I'm kind of jumping ahead. I've got it all kind of written out in my notes,
okay.
But dyslexia affects the students in a variety of ways. And if you are a diabetic and you're a child with diabetes, type 1 diabetes, we don't just start off with the needle, right? We start off with letting them know what is going on with their body, and then how their body is supposed to produce insulin, but when it's not producing, this is the why. And we know that the brain does not receive new information unless it understands the why. I think it's an amygdala, right? They're like, until the brain knows why, it doesn't move forward with information. So accuracy is the word. When I train, I'm like, write down accuracy. When you're dealing with a student with dyslexia, accuracy means, how does dyslexia specifically address this student? And I think many times we say, oh, they're dyslexic, and we send them into intervention. And we know as great therapists, you start at the beginning, you're exposed to everything, and then the things they can go slow on, the things they're going slow on, then you marinate there and you give them additional skills until they've mastered. If they've mastered it, we move forward. Well, dyslexia is not just in reading and spelling. And so these students, I think they develop reading skills, but then what Melissa was talking about, when they get to middle school and high school, we have two types of students. We have students who have never been identified, and now we have secondary consequences, which we're going to talk about. Or you have students who are identified in elementary school. They didn't get to the other additional language skills. They weren't introduced in the classroom yet. And so, yes, they mastered some basic reading, but now they're struggling in class, and the parents are like, we don't know what's going on, and the student doesn't know.
Yeah. This is what I love about talking to you, Nancy, because you give these little examples like the insulin. I remember listening to you before, and you give some real life things. It's like this, and now you apply it this way to dyslexia. And I love that picture or that example, that correlation that you make with real life examples. So thank you so much for that.
So Nancy, we had Dr. Jan Hasbrook on our podcast, and she said that all words aspire to be sight words because all words need instant retrieval. So how do you think, knowing what you know about the dyslexia, the definition you gave us, knowing what you know as a therapist, how do you think we can encourage automaticity of words so that all words, decodable and non-decodable, can be recognized on sight?
Okay, this one's so big. So stop me when you're like, oh gosh, Nancy, you're jumping into so many things. So I have a new session on sight words, and I am like loving it because I don't know that teachers have, well, those of us who are like drool over, go to all the conferences and love reading, it's different. But many of our general education teachers might not have that passion for reading as many of us do. And so I really think the first step, what we need to do is make sure our teachers are trained in what is a sight word. Mm-hmm. And it's not a sight word. We say high frequency words, we say sight word, we say irregular words, heart words. Mm-hmm. When I think what we need to do is make sure that every teacher first talks about the definition, how we're going to use our language, because language leads you, right? And so if different teachers from different grade levels talk about them differently, then what I learned in kindergarten is different than how my first grade teacher approached it, is different than how my second grade teacher approached it. Mm-hmm. So what I'd like for teachers to think about is that we put a lot more emphasis on sight words, especially for kids with dyslexia. So that high frequency is just how common. We have the Dolch and Fry's words. How often are these words seen? Orthographic mapping. This is how we teach all of our kids, right? Mm-hmm. Best practices, science of reading. We want to make sure that kids see pattern inside of shape, sound, and meaning, right? Mm-hmm. And that automaticity is in that left hemisphere. For our typical readers, if they have exposure, they get it. But for this podcast, our students that have dyslexia are struggling to see that shape, sound correlation. Mm-hmm. However, they have meaning.
Yeah.
And so many of these kids will know they can say a word or they understand the word, but they're having difficulty with associating it with the spelling of it, mm-hmm. The pronunciation of it. So that orthographic mapping it's crucial for our kids with dyslexia to see it in color, because their sensory, their visual memory is stronger for most of these kids. And so when they see it in a multisensory way, they can associate it. And then we look at orthographic mapping means that I have automaticity, which is the majority of these words. So they're reading with fluency, which is 75% of our words in print are sight words, especially for the lower level readers. And then we have, this is the other great thing if you've gone to any of Dr. Kilpatrick, is that the majority, Mote says, 4% of all the words in print today are truly irregular, only 4%.
Wow.
Okay.
So I've never heard 4%.
Only 4%. So most of our words are following this orthographic pattern. And if we've taught pattern, then we can associate it so the children can get it to stick, right? It's like you saw AT says at and then associate. I will give you the link later, but Whiz Kids, WHIZ Kids, it's a nonprofit organization after school program. And they created a sight word list that's all phonetically organized.
Oh.
I love it. So what I don't know if I'm jumping around, my apologies. So number one, we want to make sure that our teachers consistently in our classroom look at sight words with the right vocabulary. Number two, we want them to start organizing it with orthographic patterning if they aren't already, right? We want them to have that. And then third, you want to make sure they have a sound wall. You can Google a sound sheet. For kids with dyslexia, this is so crucial because if a teacher has not adopted structured literacy or the science of reading, and they are having spelling lists that go with the reading instead of phonetic, words are way big shout out to spelling, then they're not making that connection. Maybe your general classroom student, tier 2, tier 1 are okay, but your tier 3 students are really needing that sound wall because they're not seeing the pattern of the shape, sound, and meaning. And then your irregular high frequency words, you teach them as they come along, and you show them this is a word that's not going to fit the pattern. And so that way they're not like, oh, I thought all the words were hard. No, there's some words that are hard for all of us, like said. And then you show them how to do that with multisensory. So sight words, I think because they're small, many teachers do not put the emphasis on how to instruct sight words. Instead, they think they should be memorized. And they think sight word means that it has automaticity, when actually we need to see it as sight words follow patterned. They are inside of orthographic mapping. Some are irregular, and we need to teach it with intention.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on, say, for example, beginning readers where it really does follow the sight word pattern or the frequently used word patterns? One of the big ones recently, Piggy and Gerald, it's basically these books by Mo Williams, and it is designed to be repetitious practice of sight words to make that more automatic. So it has words like jump and go and really, and they just say the same words over and over and over, kind of like reminiscent of see Dick run, 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 things like that. So what are your thoughts on those types of books?
So lots of thoughts. First of all, repetition is great for kids, right? But repetition with a Y is more impactful. And so I do have a sight word process that I work with my students with dyslexia, and I have been doing it for over 15 years, and I've done it from grade school up, because you'll find kids in high school that are like, Mrs. D, I've never been able to do that word. You'll see them mix up there and there, your and your, R and R. And so they really are struggling with sight words, and it's because they haven't done the orthographic patterning, used color, and then gone to, where's that word inside of my memory? May I dive into that already?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Is this okay? So I've created a Fry list, and it's got 2 checkboxes in front of it, and it's on my website for free. And the reason why I have 2 checkboxes is students that have dyslexia are giving out energy to read, and there's only so much energy I can give you. When students have dyslexia, I compare it to people who have arthritis. And if today's my day that I have to run the mile, well, if I've had rest and the temperature is correct and I have my anti-inflammatory and my brace, I can do my mile. But when I don't have these things, then my mile is going to take longer, or I may not be successful. Yeah. Or if I don't even know I have arthritis, I'm just out there with no help, no support, and I just think I'm not good. And I've told myself I'm not strong, I'm not athletic, I'm not these things. The same goes for my students that have dyslexia on this race of reading and the energy it takes to do something. So for sight words, they're these little tiny words that should not be cumbersome. And so it makes them more frustrated that and think about it, 75% of those words are sight words. Yeah. And so all of a sudden it's very overwhelming that the small words are the obstacle, and they're not old enough or mature enough to recognize why the reading is so frustrating. Mm-hmm. So the first thing I do with my students before we do those readers, because you asked, what do I think about that repetition? I said, well, I have to know my why. So before I go into my readers, I will have a piece of paper. I've taken it from maybe a story of their interest. I will do maybe a paragraph, and I have increased the font, increased the space between the lines, and it fills the whole page. And we walk through and talk about the words first. And a lot of teachers are like, why? I'm like, because you don't have a disability in reading. This is hard for us. So one of the things I do in my trainings is I do ask every teacher to have a poster or a picture on their desk of one thing they would never want to learn. I never want to learn how to jump off a cliff in those kite. Have you seen the people that they open their arms up and they look like they're flying squirrels?
Yes.
Never want to learn that. Never want to learn how to jump out of an airplane. Never want to do a marathon. Never want to learn how to play the violin. What's your never want to learn? Students with dyslexia want to be intelligent and want to engage in reading, but it is so hard for them, and the energy that goes into it, knowing the why and you experiencing it emotionally with them first before those readers. Yeah. So what I do with my students is the first thing I do is I'm like, Mrs. D is just going to have you come up here and go over the story. Are there any words on here that you would never want to read? And they're like, none of them. That's all no, thank you for telling me that. That's it, Mrs. D. That's it. And I'm like, okay. I make it safe for the kids to tell me that it's hard for them, or they're frustrated, or these words don't make sense. And so before we even get to those decodables, we'll walk through that. Then we'll go through and I'll point to a word and I'm like, do you think if you saw that word, do you think you'd be able to say it? So I'm not asking them to read. I know that sounds weird, but there really is something psychological different. And they're like, oh, I don't know that word. And I'm like, okay, I just wanted to check. I will have a safe place with sight words on there, a book that they should be able to read, and they get to come to me in a small, that's where my lesson on time is. I do not make it overwhelming. We just like barely dibble in it. They talk about what the sight words are to them or which ones they'd want. And slowly we work through and we've seen all the words that they feel comfortable with or don't feel comfortable with. Then we go to the decodable. So that's a long answer for you. But I do not just give my kids the decodables. And I talk about when you're learning to swim, we don't go the deep end. Right? You splash around the water with floaties on and you take lessons and you do practice before you ever do it. And for our kids who are struggling to read, I don't put them into books until they've done their warm-ups. And so I do have a warm-up for them. And we do, their burpees are their sight word practice. And then the triangles are their warm-up. And I tell them that vocalists warm up their throat, singers warm up their vocals, athletes warm up their muscles, and readers have to warm up that left hemisphere. So we will practice our sight words in isolation. Then we have decodables that they have had a routine practicing inside them. So they read them over and over and over again. But when we get into those decodables, we have gone through together and highlighted the words so that they feel confident with them. And so that way, when they're reading it, it's not just memorized what the words are. They have associated what those sight words are in isolation.
Wow. What a great idea.
I have a Fry sight word list and the words are enlarged and there's more space and there's 2 boxes in front of it, each word. And the reason why is because many of our students will spend so much time sounding out a word and we're like, nope, not a sight word. Well, we mean authenticity. We mean rate. But they did work hard and sound it out and find the word. One of them, let's say this is what it will sound like. They'll say this. And I want to make sure I'm like, I saw how hard you worked at that pattern. I watched that you were learning how to decode. I could tell that you were using your multisensory skills. You get credit for knowing how to read that word. Now we're going to work on rate. So my students, I'm teaching them how to be engaged in learning how to learn, right? I'm not showing them what they need to learn. I'm teaching them how to learn as a student with dyslexia. Just like going back to that diabetic, I teach diabetics how to go to birthday parties. I teach a diabetic how to be at a new restaurant. I teach them how to go through a menu. A student with dyslexia needs to be taught how to have dyslexia, not just how to read.
Wow.
That's really fascinating.
It's totally different inside of therapy. And so that sight word list, they only do when they go through it, when they have a word that either they weren't able to read it or they could read it but didn't have rate. Once we know one word, that's the only word we're going to work on. They stop right there. And again, that goes with the time session. We've maximized energy because we've reduced what they need to do inside of the time.
Wow.
And so there's the anxiousness. So we have one word. Then what they do is we take that word and we go to prior knowledge. We know with Dr. Sally Shaywitz that many of our students are reading in their frontal lobe and their right hemisphere, and they're doing it from memory and visual. Dr. Temple Grandin, I don't know if you know Temple Grandin, she has 6 different books out right now about visual thinkers, and guess who she brings up? Students with dyslexia.
Oh, really?
It links us in. Oh, girl, I've got that book all highlighted. I'm like, yes, this is us. And she talks about how what great visual learners we are. And that's why our intervention works, because we need multisensory. What's happened, and I get too excited, sorry. But in the UK, they did research on automaticity, and they found our deficits, not automaticity, that we have great automaticity in that right hemisphere.
Yeah.
And so creative visual learning is connecting to language. It's our left hemisphere in that symbol area that's frustrated or has obstacle or deficit. So inside of sight words, 75% of what we're reading, where we're struggling is for us, they are not making sense. We have not developed the orthographic mapping. So where do I stick these sight words? So the next thing I do is I'm going to stick them on the right hemisphere. This isn't permanent. This is not what you do first. The first thing you do, I want to make sure I clarify, orthographic mappings first. Orthographic mapping is proven, great research. It's where we go. But when you have a student who is like, I don't get it still,
Yeah.
I'm adding a layer for therapists or classroom teachers. How do I connect the why, my frustration, into making sense on how to engage reading? So I've got my word this, and now I ask the student, because I've worked several weeks on what is their interest or what's their strengths. And I know this kid loves basketball, right? So we do basketball sight word book. So every sight word is going to be inside the conversation or the words he understands inside of this book he's creating. So the student loves basketball. This is the word that he needs to practice. So we write our own. It's on the website. It's an actual book. So they practice reading and put it in there, and it's his sentence. If you've worked with kids with dyslexia, you know their oral capability. Most of them, they're like, Mrs. Guess what happened this weekend? Blah, 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 blah. They have beginning, middle, and end. They have sequencing. They have transition words. They have juicy words. They have all this great knowledge. But then you ask them to read or write it, you're like,
Yeah.
Right? Dyslexic kid. So we want to take that knowledge and information and put it inside of this book where a sight word makes sense. It goes, oh, I've been using this. You use this all the time. You're like, this is my basketball.
Yeah.
Oh, I say that all the time, Mrs. D. I'm like, I know you do. So it's the first time that this has a place in their brain. So when we do orthographic mapping, it connects.
Yeah.
And so it's a really powerful sight word book. This is the other thing, please, I emphasize sight word instruction actually before I do therapy. And here's my why on that. I had two sons, both put them in piano when they were little. And one, I put him with a primo instructor. Like she's good. So he had to learn how to sit upright and have his fingers right and his placement right. And the book was right and everything was correct. And he wanted out of there so fast. My second son, I got a different instructor. It was this dad who was in a band. And the first thing he did with my son, he's like, what's your favorite song? And he was like, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, all right, Cole, you do this on the piano. Do, 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 do. And he was like, and then he played the song. And my son was like, this is awesome. I can play the piano day one.
Yeah.
So that engagement and that why for a student who their deficit is in reading, I got them where I'm like, sight words, dude, you're using them. They're like, I do? I'm like, yeah, you're using sight words. Let's show you how. So I've got them understanding their disability. And I'm like, we're not giving you how to read. We're teaching you how to live inside of dyslexia, along with giving you strategies with reading. We're going to look at these sight words one at a time where you feel confident. Oh, that's what that word is. Yes, I've attached it to when you speak. We've put it inside of a book that you know and you're practicing it. Then we get that decodable book. So when I'm doing that memorization, well, memorization is a different part of that development. But if I understand why those words and how I use those words, and I'm getting confident those words, when I've increased sight word knowledge and connection, do I have kids who are wanting to get inside of books? And then when they want to get inside of books, now they're like, Mrs. D, there's only 4 words on here I don't know. And I'm like, that's what I was thinking. Okay, how do I decode those? Let's use your orthographic mapping. It has changed it. So I love when teachers are teaching sight words with intention. They have the skill and they know how to communicate it with the students. And then they have that extra layer of that right hemisphere visual. And then their frontal lobe where it has the meaning and information, just that deficit's over in that sound correlation. And then we bridge it all together. It's pretty amazing.
Goodness.
Yeah, you watch the kids like want to be in a book. And the cool part is putting the sight words into their own book. They're having to feel turning the page. They're reading the words. The only emphasis I have is my moms like to make it a writing book.
Yeah.
And so I do highly encourage this is not when we are working on handwriting or grammar. In the beginning, it is truly just a sight word book. And then depending on the students or individuals, I can increase other skills. But I really try to make it just connecting a word I say to a word inside of sight words that's in this book, and then connecting it to the grapheme, the phoneme relationships, and then patterning.
Wow.
And you got a changed kid. Yeah, you really do. It really,
Wow.
it's phenomenal.
Wow.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, that's amazing. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Hi, this is Melissa with Kids First Dyslexia Services. I am excited to share with you my private practice. Kids First Dyslexia Services is a private practice that specializes in dyslexia therapy. Each one-on-one session focuses on instruction specific to your child's needs in a nurturing environment that develops self-esteem, builds confidence, and fosters a sense of accomplishment, resulting in happier kids with higher levels of achievement. We provide a professional, personalized experience, always putting the child first. We value the relationships with both our students and parents because strengthening skills and overcoming hurdles to achieve desired goals and success is a team effort. For more information, please visit www.kidsfirstdyslexia.com. That is www.kidsfirstdyslexia.com.
Hi there. This is Amy Rodenroth, owner of Discovery Dyslexia Services. So tell me if any of these situations are familiar to you. Your dyslexia teacher/therapist has suddenly retired unexpectedly, and you do not have the personnel to fill the space. Or you do not have enough trained teachers or therapists for the number of students who have qualified for dyslexia services, and you need a trained teacher or therapist quickly, like yesterday quickly. Or you need a teacher to provide compensatory services, and you do not have anyone that can provide what's needed. Well, what do you do? I'm going to tell you what you can do. You can call Discovery Dyslexia Services. Discovery Dyslexia Services can help you with your various dyslexia concerns. We have multiple CALs who can provide virtual small group therapy. We can also train your teachers in most dyslexia curricula, either virtually or on site. Just let us know how we can help support you. For more information, go to our website at www.discovereed.com. Let me spell that for you. DYSCOVEREAD.com. I don't know, it's a funny name, but we're providing huge services for our dyslexic population. So keep in mind, Discovery Dyslexia Services, covering all your dyslexia needs. Let's return to the show. So keeping in mind with all the brain things that you were, because, I'm so specific like that, all the brain stuff you were talking about, I can remember when you were at the Regional Service Center, you're very engaging, very knowledgeable, as our listeners now know, because you're talking about the brain science and what the brain does when it's acquiring a written language. Can you explain to our audience how traditional brains acquire written language and how people identified with dyslexia acquire written language?
Nancy Young, have you seen her chart? And
Yes.
She'll talk about the 4 different levels of how we acquire language. And you have some students who, no matter what we do, they have an automaticity. I think, let me have a chart. 5% learn to read seems effortless, according to Nancy Young's research. 35% learning to read is relatively easy with broad instruction. They need structured literacy approaches. 40 to 50% need a little bit more of explicit and systematic sequential instruction to acquire reading in that left hemisphere. And so again, it's showing pattern, sound correlation, building those grapheme, phoneme relationship. But 10 to 15% of our kids need a therapeutic approach. So it's that tier 3 instructions, kids with dyslexia. Now we have kids that are in tier 2 and tier 1 that have dyslexia. They have compensated.
Yeah.
And so they might go unidentified for a long period of time because of memorization or ability. But the way they've acquired reading, for many of them, they have memorized in their reading in their frontal lobe and right hemisphere, less than that left hemisphere.
Yeah.
So to acquire it, we need the 3 different tiers, honestly. So you have the general structured literacy, then you need more explicit direct, and then you have therapeutic level, and that's the kids with dyslexia. But I want to add on top of that, there's another layer that I have found for my kids that are struggling in that tier 3. Again, not just learning how to read, but learning how to manage having dyslexia.
Yeah.
And that is, you had talked about brain research, and Dr. David Seuss is the one that you've probably heard me talk on the most. And so it's not actually the general population, how you acquire language. It's actually automaticity in our short-term, long-term, and working memory. And I think that has just as much impact on our kids developing language as it does any other skill because of their short-term memory or long-term memory in that retrieval. So do you want me to go further? Do you have a question before I go into that?
Yeah, go into it. And I was going to say, I wrote down David Souza before we got to this because I was going to say, because I remember you were referencing that book before, and I ordered it so that I could give a brain lecture about reading and writing.
Yeah, Dr. David Souza, here's the series if your school's going to do a series, because it's how the brain learns an EL student, how the math brain learns, how the diverse brain learns, how the gifted brain learns, and language acquisition. So it is a beautiful series. He takes his same research and goes into your practices or your area of expertise. And so the bottom line is, when we have sensory coming into the brain, it automatically starts to sort. And the first sorting is whether you're safe or not. Are we in fight or flight, or are we not in fight or flight? If I'm not in fight or flight, then I can take that information and decide whether I want to use it. So immediate memory is when the brain, it's individual for all of us. It says, is this useful or not useful? And so, like, the audience can't see me right now, but my earrings, if you could see me, your brain might see my earrings. You didn't go, earrings, I don't need to know about them, and let's delete that. Your brain automatically saw the earrings because your eyes are open, you see me, but you don't need to know about my earrings. So it deleted without ever a thought to you.
Right.
Well, the brain's ability, according to Dr. David Souza, at the age of 5, develops the automaticity to sort new information. And if it does not develop, then the student has ADHD or ADD.
Okay.
So think about how much information is coming in when you talk about the kids that they're like squirrel.
Yeah.
What is happening is my student with ADD is having to pay attention to what to keep and what to delete. And so any stimulation coming in, it can override of what to do. So if a student so again, think about how important the why is.
Yeah.
If I have a student and you're trying to teach them that CH has 3 origins, it comes from the Anglo-Saxon, it comes from the Greek, or it comes from the French language. And their seat wiggles, right? It goes boom, 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 boom. Seat wiggling trumps the 3 origins of the CH sound.
Yeah.
And so, but when they learn the why to it and the engagement of why they need to do it, you have a student that's taking their focus and putting it on CH instead of the chair. And so I think teachers understanding the importance of time and the importance of how you talk to these students and grab their attention is changing how much they're gaining inside of our therapeutic classes. You know, if they had a day where they didn't, they still won't know CH next week, right?
Yeah.
Until they've seen it inside of their sight words, inside of their book, and apply it. Dr. David Souza says, so it comes in, I'm safe. I'm not in fight or flight. Then it goes to immediate memory. And I say, oh, what she's saying about dyslexia today is important to me. I'm going to move it to working memory. When information goes into working memory, that's when we are deciding how to assimilate it or attach it to importance. Does this have relevance to me? Right? That's what working memory is doing. So if I have no reason to hold it, I dump it. And think about it when you're going to a training. What's the first thing teachers, where are we going today? Oh, we're going to the blah, blah, blah training. Why do we need it?
Right.
It's the first thing we do too, right? I need to know my storage only has so much space. How come would I need to know this? So students are the same way. And that working memory is unique to each individual. According to David Souza, we have different, depending on the person, what we have available. But if you have a certain amount of space, I'm just going to say you have 10 buckets, let's say. A bucket can be full because of a deficit. If you have a learning disability, a bucket can already be full because you have prior trauma. That's where we hold things that are difficult. We hold it in working memory. It hasn't been resolved, or it hasn't had peace, so it's not in long term. And working memory sorts itself. I love the movie In and Out, because memory will sort itself when we rest.
Yeah.
And so I've told teachers that when you have a student daydreaming, I never am frustrated by a student that daydreams. There's many reasons why a student will go away, and many times their buckets are full and they don't have space, and they've got to go away to empty a bucket and come back.
Yeah.
And then if you have information, okay, I go back through it every time because I don't have a chart for them. So information's coming in, you're not in fight or flight. immediate memory says, hey, I want to know more about this. Inside of working memory, you're like, hey, there's a reason why I should know this. This is how I can use it. Then when you've used it or it's become a part of you, it can go into long-term memory. Mm-hmm. This Dr. David Sousa calls an automatic pattern. It's automaticity. This is how your brain does memory. All of us. Doesn't matter if you have disability. But here's two key things that have to do with our kids with dyslexia. Endorphins open up long-term retrieval systems and long-term memory. And it says, hey, this is good for you. Let's have more. Cortisol blocks or shuts down some of those receptors in long-term memory. And so there's a block. Well, when our students go through dyslexia therapy and it's only a reading therapy and not how to live with disability, many of my kids come into our therapy classes or come into school and they automatically are producing cortisol. Mm-hmm. Is the teacher going to call on me? Am I going to have to read out loud? I'm going to fall behind with my assignment. I don't think I understood what she said. Uh-oh, I'm going to spell it wrong. And they are filled with cortisol, and I don't have students who can hold information or keep it for the next session. And I do believe that this is one of the key areas for therapy or people working with kids with dyslexia. You need to talk about the disability, how it directly affects them with accuracy, and how to use accommodations, why, along with developing reading skills.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You know, I think that this is a important concept that I know that when I have kids that come into my private practice, or even when I was in the schools, I would always talk to them about the importance of feeling like they can trust me, that I'm here to help them, mm-hmm. things of that nature. But in private practice, I've kind of even grown more and learned that they almost need that daily repetition of a confidence boost that mm-hmm. they're here for a reason. Mm-hmm. The reason is to improve their reading. They want to improve their reading. They just need to know that they're safe. Just like you were saying, they need that daily. Mm-hmm. And I think that would be something I would love for other therapists to know. And I think that that's your message that you're sending out. But a daily, a lot of schools will just do a beginning of the year intro, and that's wonderful that they're doing that. But just something that just reiterates to the child that they're in a safe place. They're there to learn. Every child needs to learn how to read. They're just learning how to read the way their brain needs to learn how to read.
And it's not just learn how to read, it's how to navigate it. Because when we think of, when you're little, when you're a kid, you think of reading a school mm-hmm. or a book, but it's reading signs, it's reading at the airport, it's reading at the grocery store, it's reading everywhere. And and I think a lot of times you see a student with dyslexia, you think it's a school issue, you think it's a book issue, mm-hmm. when it is that language processing and that cortisol level and it's not a boost in my confidence like, oh, you deserve it. I believe I know I want to read and I know I'm smart, but I don't know how to live with this disability without accommodations. And that is why I start with sight words with my students, is I want them to feel good about matching their thoughts inside of what it looks like to be inside of a book.
Yeah.
And to build the confidence in that why and what it is. So yes, I want to build their confidence. I want them to feel good about themselves, but I believe it doesn't come from there is affirmation mm-hmm. that they need to read, but it's also affirmation that dyslexia affects a lot of different areas. So, and how to go into it. So again, when I have my students start to read, so this is how I build that confidence, right? It's not just saying, be proud you have dyslexia. Yes, right. But it's saying, what can I do so I can solve this? What is actually going on? What's accurate? And so when they come to the sight words, I'm like, okay, before we start the book, how many of those words on the page are sight words?
Yeah.
Okay, got a Mrs. D. Okay, how many of those words are new to you? Okay, I've got a Mrs. D. Okay, now what we can do, let's do our decoding patterns that we've learned in my class. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, now let's read that together. And I slowly scaffold in where they're like, okay, I've got this and I know why I'm struggling. Most of us, I think many kids, I've spoke with enough dyslexic kids now, we just feel like we're not bright.
Yeah.
Like I'm not a good reader. Yeah. And I think it's helpful when we know the why not a good reader and what do I need so I can get my reading in.
Right.
So, and the fastest way to get your endorphins up is laughter. So we're very light when we come in here. I'm like, okay, let's talk about some of these words. Okay, which one do you think is going to be cumbersome or which one do you think you're going to have an obstacle? And we're just very real about it. Mm-hmm. And then we go into that orthographic mapping. So I feel like if you're doing structured literacy, if you've been trained in one of the interventions, that is best practices. But if you have a disengaged student or one that's not making progress and you don't see the engagement, I do think this is the other area that may need to be added.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nancy.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
So going through the lesson cycle as a dyslexia therapist, I have always found it the most difficult to incorporate written instruction, written language instruction, how to write passages, how to write sentences, things of that nature. What do you recommend people do to incorporate writing into their dyslexia instruction cycle?
Well, that depends on the grade level and the student is the first answer. And I hate that every time someone asks me a question online, I'm like, well, it depends, right?
Right.
But I'm going to back it up. I have another session and it's called Parts to Whole. And again, I think many of our students with dyslexia have not been taught how to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is a part to whole session. There is Learn to Draw. And it's a series you can find on Amazon. It's how to draw animals, how to draw people. I got so addicted. I think I have 12 different ones of these. It is how I start my writing and reading process, mainly my writing process with my students. And you're like, Nancy, what does that have to do with it? Because the very first part of my students go back to that picture I have on your desk. What is the one thing you would never want to learn? Writing is sometimes even more cumbersome than having to read and like taking notes. It's not that I'm not smart and it's not that I don't know what needs to be written. The rate that I have to pull together what I'm writing and keeping up with what the teacher's trying to say, it's cumbersome.
Yeah.
So writing is so difficult. I like to break it down into parts. So it depends on what type of writing. And I also teach that for my students. I'm like, okay, it depends on what we're writing. Am I writing a note to my mom? Am I writing down notes? Am I writing to share what I feel? Or am I writing from a book and proving it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Am I citing something? So that helps them to know, oh, Mrs. D, I never thought about it. I'm like, yeah, let's learn what is writing. So that way they know where they need, again, this goes with that time, where am I going to put energy? When they have the ability to know what is about to be asked of me, where do I need to put energy? What strategies do I need to use? I have a different student with dyslexia, and I have a different approach to writing. Well, the way I get my kids there is I do these learn how to draw. So depending on your student's ability, I will change it up, but most of them, I'll show them the end picture. And I'm like, do you think you can draw an owl? And they're like, oh, I don't think so. And I'm like, all right, let's see. Well, this shows you 6 different squares on how to draw an owl. And I'm like, well, do you think you can draw an oval? And they're like, I think so, Mrs. D. And I'm like, well, let's try. I'll use a different tone, but I've done this with high school students too. So I'm like, they're like, I can't draw that. And I'm like, oh, really? Okay, well, let's see if you can. What I'm doing is I'm showing them you can do small things and scaffold it into the harder thing.
Yeah.
So we start with pictures. And so when I have a student who's overwhelmed, like, Mrs. D, oh my gosh, I've got to write this 3-page paper. And I'm like, what am I going to say to you? And they're like, you're going to say break it into parts.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I am. So let's look at our parts and let's look at our time and our energy and see what tools and resources we need. And these are the strategies on top of teachers who I'm assuming you already know how to teach writing. Like you're already a teacher.
Right.
What I'm giving you is the tools for what do I do with a student who's blocked, disengaged, shut down, disinterested, and given up, and doesn't even turn in a paper because they're like, I knew I never could have done it.
Yeah.
So part to whole strategies are a great way. And then I'm like, okay, the teachers ask, so if it's a little kid, I have journal writing. I do encourage, we wrote every single day in our classroom and they only had to write 2 to 3 sentences. This is second grade. The reason why is in 2 and 3 sentences, I can tell you what skills we need to work on.
Yeah.
So is it vocabulary? Is it spelling? Is it transition? It doesn't matter. But in 2 or 3 sentences, they can accomplish that. It goes back to time. Small incremental things of great practice, mastery practice instead of, practice over and over that's not good for you is not good practice.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a little tiny in the morning, my students would have, every student would be placed on their desk. Now this is second grade. I can tell you what I did for high school. They would have an animal and they had so much time to draw. So they started learning how to manage their time and being aware of time. Then after the timer went off, then they had to write 2 to 3 sentences. And the sentences could be simple or long. And they learned fiction and nonfiction. I said, on your animal, you can tell me facts about them, or you can tell me something creative about them. So my students, this is second grade, and they're already starting to become confident in skills that they were going to need for paragraph writing and, oh, oh my gosh, I just went blank. What are the two type of essays you have in your
narrative, expository?
Yes. So we're getting their skill set ready to feel confident to write. Then inside of writing, and I know that I don't know if this is the direction you're even going, you're like, Nancy, but I'm assuming your audience has the confidence in teaching writing. This is how do I teach a student that has dyslexia with writing? Mm-hmm. So when they've written their 2 sentences or 3 sentences, the first thing I do is I am accurate in my compliment. So I will write a message back and I'm like, I like that you put stripes on your tiger. I don't say you're an amazing artist.
Right.
I'm accurate with the things that I say to them. And then I'll say, Mrs. D recognized 2 skills. Which skill would you like to learn? And so they only choose 1 skill to learn. And I'll say, at your age, it's typical for a student to be learning to spell of. So right here, you wrote it UV, which makes sense. You can learn how to spell it now, or we can wait. And then you didn't have punctuation at the end of your sentence. You can learn that skill now and practice it. Which one would you like to learn? The ownership went back on the student. Mm-hmm. I didn't overwhelm them. They only have a few sentences. Then they say, Mrs. D, I think I want to learn the of. And I'm like, all right, let's figure out our strategies. Would you like to see it? And so I go through the different strategies of how they could acquire of, and they're all multisensory. Would you like to see it in a sentence? Do you want to highlight inside of a book? Would you like to write it in front of me? Would you like to say it in the board? So we explore, because I tell my students all the time, Mrs. D is not the one that has the answers. I'm offering you strategies, but you're going to find the one that's right for you. Again, that's putting learning back on students. Yeah. I think social and emotional, we all know that education's on a pendulum, and I believe social emotional has swung to a point of students are becoming codependent instead of independent. And we want them to develop accommodations and strategies not to procrastinate or to have someone do it for them or to have reduced or not to be graded on it, but to actually have skill. So in that writing in the morning, we focused on 1 skill that they were wanting to master. And then we slowly, over time, by the mid-year, every 3 months, these students were really making gains because we did 1 skill at a time. I didn't focus on what was expected for that week that they were supposed to learn. It was individualized. And on their IEP, I would say these are the skills we're developing inside of writing. And that way they didn't feel they were compared to their peers. Mm-hmm. I made sure that the curriculum was with them. Their intelligence was with the story. Their intelligence was with what they were supposed to acquire. I was creative in the way I got my grades. That was classroom, not in therapy. So practicing writing regularly. The other thing that I would encourage you, talked about what books would I recommend. There's a book it's a workbook, and it's Banish Boring Words. It is phenomenal. I use it constantly because many of your students with dyslexia have a vocabulary that does not reflect their reading or writing ability. And so when I have a student in a small group, they're like, Mrs. D, this pizza's fantastic. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I love that. So the next time I'm with them, I'll write a note. I don't do it then. The next time I have them, like, can I tell you something I noticed? They're like, well, Mrs. D. And I said, I noticed you use the word fantastic. So do you know that word? Oh, yeah. Like, I would love for that word to be a part of your written expression. Right now, it's in your oral expression. You use it correctly. You used expression and you had inflection in your voice. So Mrs. D wants to show you that word inside of our book. So I will have Banish Boring Words. If you have it, I find it inside there. And I ask the student, what color do you want to highlight? And they highlight that word. Or they can have a word bank on their desk. Every student in my classroom has a word bank on my desk. So that way it was never, the kids that need them have them. Yeah. Every student increasing vocabulary. And then you can also have, most teachers have them, but a specialized dictionary or a word bank that is always with them. And so that way that they're linking words that they speak to words that we want them to use in their writing. Yeah. Also in Banish Boring Words, it has pages by adverb, adjectives, synonyms, different ways to say said. I put this in their IEP or 504 plan that they can carry it all the way through. That way it's not a dictionary or a thesaurus if they're not allowed to have technology as a resource, and they start building each year utilizing this for their writing. It's a great tool. The other huge source that I do for writing my writers, one of my favorite ones, and teachers, I have some teachers who are like, I might do it or might not do it. I find it to be highly successful. Again, it's connecting their visual thinking to the grapheme.
Mm-hmm.
And what I have my students do is tell stories into a computer, and then I will print out their story. When a student reads their own words, it is sometimes the first time that they're like, oh, I can read. And I'm like, because you can speak, the only place that we're trying to connect is what it looks like on print.
Yeah.
But you know the word this, you know the word was, you know the word fantastic. And so then I will sometimes, after they've spoken to the computer and I have printed it out, bigger font, have them illustrate the book. That way they have something tangible. We might go through and look at all the sight words.
Wow.
Look how many sight words that you use in your speech. Mrs.
Wow.
D, I had no idea.
That's awesome.
So it's that connecting of my deficit with my intelligence.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a minute. And now the skill of orthographic mapping, you've done the why for them.
Yeah.
And you've told them your intellect is okay.
Yeah.
You just have this deficit in looking at the shape and sound. Then we go back to that part to whole. I take the animals, which helps them in their writing, or whenever they're overwhelmed with any type of project, I'm like, okay, what are we going to do? Break it into parts. Okay, it's like drawing that out, babe. Right now, we're just going to do the oval. So let's start with your sentence, or let's start with your topic. So we broke it down a way they know it. Or I'll use pattern blocks, and we will just move those around and play in them. And I'm like, okay, you feel very good at making individual shapes into a bigger picture. Oh, yeah, Mrs. D, I love this. So I take a place where they're confident and comfortable and can visualize it. And then I'll use letters and like, look how I took these individual shapes and made a big picture, but this one's a word. What's that word? And again, you're utilizing a strength or automaticity in their visual spatial memory and connecting it to where there's a deficit. And they're like, oh, I can do this. Yes.
Wow.
Now, your high school students and your middle school students, even if they had intervention as a young kid, they have not had the practice with a professional on how to write a research paper.
Right.
And if they have a higher cognitive ability, they've got another avenue where they can showcase their strengths. They have parents who are involved. Okay, those kids generally do pretty well, right? Even if they have the deficit in their disability. But for our kids who don't have those other areas of support, these are the things I've done for my struggling writers. I have met with the classroom teacher and talked through what would this paper look like for you, for them to show mastery of the skill you're expecting.
Yeah.
And so we're very flexible with how that might look. When the student knows that they have a conversation with the teacher, they tend to actually satisfy the expectation of the teacher. They just needed to know, you know how much energy it's going to take me for this and how much time it will take me to achieve it and what I'm going to need for it. Do you see the difference in my formula?
Yeah.
I think a lot of our therapists talk about improve reading, so it improves writing. But what I'm emphasizing is putting in the element of time and energy and strategy.
Yeah.
And teach it and embed it, not just say, oh, and they have accommodations. I think students need to look at their writing as a way to approach it. As a student with dyslexia, how do I break this assignment into parts so that my energy and my effort is supported and I understand what the teacher's looking for? So I also love it when my teachers are educated on my campuses and I ask them, are you wanting to see their writing ability? Are you wanting to see their spelling ability? Or are you wanting to see what they know about this content?
Yeah.
And depending on the subject and the teacher, the answer is different.
Yeah.
Right?
Makes sense.
And so I, again, teach that to my students with dyslexia on what is the teacher looking for, how we're going to break it into parts, what energy is going to be put where. And in your IEP, you have teacher review before turning it in.
Yeah.
Or you get to put it through spell check, or you get to use AI. So that way the student is already recognizing that writing is more about their intellect and understanding, not their skill and spelling.
Right.
And then when we've mastered that, I have permission, depending on the deficit of my student, that I only did this maybe for 3 of my, hundreds of students. But we had a transcribing accommodation.
Wow.
So my student would talk, I would type. Teacher knew it was ugly. Like I'd say, this is our ugly version, right? Like this is ugly copy. But that way the teacher knew I'm not doing their work. This is their. Then, and the teacher and I would work together. We'd have a second, like inner accommodation. Then we would have edit revision. We'd turn it in and then we'd have final copy. My student knew time and energy because we had 4 times we were going to do the paper together.
Yeah.
I have an engaged student. And then I started doing the things I did with my elementary kids. I was like, can I pull out 2 things I think that you might want to change in your paper? I noticed that you don't have a transition word. I've also noticed that you don't end with your first paragraph statement or whatever it was. They're like, oh, Mrs. D, let's work on those transition words. All right. Well, by the 4th time, and I've had them for a whole year, or some of my babies, I had them freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year.
Yeah.
By their senior year, they're like, I know you're going to say break it into parts.
I love that you made it manageable and digestible for them. Instead of red inking their copy in an edit, you just pulled out a couple of things and said, okay, I like this, I like this, I like this. Here's 2 things we're going to work on.
But the message inside there is it's teaching them how to live inside of their disability.
Yes.
Because if I've been to reading intervention and I'm still struggling in my writing class, what's wrong with me?
Right.
And we want students with dyslexia to know that it is a language processing disability that can manifest in more than one just reading and spelling.
Yeah.
And so we do have to talk about that writing and what they need for that support.
No, and I think, like Melissa had said earlier, it's something that we overlook. And I can remember, and you were out here, kids go through a dyslexia curricula, they finish the curricula, and then they're like, well, they're still dyslexic. What are we going to do? Right? And well, what's the thing our older kids really need that support with? They need support with spelling, they need the support with writing, and they need the support with fluency and comprehension, probably, And
I will tell you, that's what I felt was frustrating at the high school level. We kind of told the parents, hey, if we put them in intervention for 2 years, they're going to be okay. And I think the students, then the only support they might have is extra time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they haven't really been taught how to manage language and what it looks like year after year. And I've said this in multiple trainings that when I had the exposure to different campuses, what I learned was when you say oral accommodation on an IEP, right? The teachers read it, they sign off on it, they know oral accommodation. Well, depending on the teacher, that's interpreted multiple ways. So if the student had a teacher who loves technology, their oral accommodation was they had audiobooks.
Yeah.
But the next school year, the teacher with oral accommodation is like, well, they can't have anything read to them on the test except the questions. That's all I do.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that they pass the state assessment.
Yeah.
And then the next year you have a teacher oral accommodation is like, well, if she asks for it, I give it to her.
Yeah.
If you have a student with dyslexia, it is vital that we teach them how to manage having dyslexia with language, and it's not just that reading. And so in that writing process, at the beginning of the school year, I will ask the IEP in 504, how will you be administering this oral accommodation? And make sure that question is written out. How will that be administered? Yeah. And many times your middle school and high school students are like, I am not going to go up there and have a teacher read to me.
Yeah.
So teachers will say, well, if they don't use it, they lose it. Mm-hmm. And the students are not going to ask for that support in front of their peers because they're wanting to look like they don't need it. And so that is that conversation, especially for therapists, to say, what do you do in a situation where you need words read to you? Like, what can we do there for you?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it really is empowering. I'm working with a student right now, and anytime I'm reading, she has beautiful long hair. Anytime I'm reading, she pulls her hair over one shoulder and just kind of holds it. Your audience can't see that, but holds it and kind of pets it, I guess. And as soon as it's time for me to engage her, like we stop reading, or it's her turn, or I read, however we're doing it. When I'm about to engage her, she'll pull her hair across her lips like a mustache.
Oh.
And I know it's her, like, what's going to happen? It's caution.
Yeah.
Then when it's time for her to do something independent, like she knows I'm going to expect something of her, she'll grab the back of her hair and pull. Well, of course, I waited a while till our relationship was trusted. And I said, may I tell you something I noticed? And she said, yeah. And I said, I noticed, when you're confident or when you're hesitant or when you're insecure with what we're doing. And she said, do you know, when I was elementary school, I used to pull out all the hair in the back of my head. I had to go to a doctor. Mm-hmm. And I said, so what I want you to do now is I want you to recognize when you have your hair by your lip, we're going to stop there and you're going to talk through what you think you might need.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she's in high school and it took us a while. And then she didn't even know how to talk about it. She didn't know how to walk through it. And they have talked about academic PTSD. And that response for the brain is when many of us, when we're about to read, our brain is not reliable. Yes, I know orthographic mapping. Yes, I've been through remediation. Yes, I can read. But when I'm put on the spot, my cortisol is high. All of a sudden, I make mistakes. Still to this day, I will make mistakes. Transferring 12 and 21, good golly, I cannot tell you how many times I've written phone numbers down wrong. And so I now know I have to touch each number and ask the person to repeat it back to me without apology. I'll say, hi, my name, I have dyslexia. Will you please read back the numbers? And I have to touch them.
Yeah.
So same for her. She knows she has dyslexia, but she just thinks it's a reading disability, right? Not a language processing disability. And so she has this anxiety when we are doing anything because she knows she's going to get it wrong or her brain's not reliable or it's somehow there's going to be a mistake with lots of energy and effort.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Still mistake and have to do it again.
Yeah.
So we start talking about that energy. So when we get right here, I'm like, whoa, let's walk through what you're feeling. She's like, Mrs. D, I think this is too much reading. I don't think I know what I'm retaining. I was like, then what are we going to do? We're going to write it down. All right. And then what are we going to do? We're going to see what I have retained. That's right.
Right.
So you're learning how you learn.
Wow.
Totally different. And now, by the way, she's kind of worked me out of a job. And I was like, I don't think you even need me anymore. She's like, I've really figured it out. And most of hers was not reading ability.
Yeah.
It was confidence in how to manage her disability.
So the hair pulling was a self-soothing type of thing, do you think?
Oh, nerves, anxiety.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm.
You have students, they'll bite their nail, they'll twist their hair, they'll kind of rock. It should not be stressful to be reading.
Right.
So as soon as I have a student who's showing me stress signs when they're reading, that's when I need to pull back and kind of say, let's notice something. What do we want to do here?
Yeah.
And again, in that lesson for time, I do feel like many of our kids are rushed.
Yeah.
And I make sure to slow down lessons. And you're like, we don't have time to slow it down.
Yeah.
But when you go too fast, you're not getting any retention.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when you slow it back down and let them teach, and one of the things I did inside of my intervention at the high school level is I had them teach it.
Yeah.
They were engaged. They thought it was fun. Their memory was on. And so that's how we kept them participating. And we went at a pace that they felt confident in. Again, when you feel crunched for time, what do? We get cortisol.
Yeah.
And
That's
school's all about time, isn't it? Hurry up, we need to get the paper.
Yeah.
Hurry up, we need to turn that in. Hurry up, we need to get. And it's a difficult environment when reading is your deficit.
Right.
Yeah.
And the pile on of one concept to the next concept to the next concept continuously. And you perceive other people can do this and you can't.
Right. Right. This concludes part 1 of our discussion with Nancy Hannagan. Join us next week as we continue our conversation. The Dyslexia Duo podcast hosts are Amy Rodenroth.
Melissa Dean.
Our producer is Greg Rodenroth.
You can find us on Facebook at The Dyslexia Duo.
Email us any questions or comments at thedyslexiaduo@gmail.com.
Awareness is so important. Share this podcast with your friends
Family,
and teachers.
thanks for joining us.
Bye.